This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
CBD is a game changer sweeping the nation. This hemp extract is the natural way to elevate your mood, eliminate aches and pains, reduce anxiety, and keep you sleeping all night long. It can even cut your workout recovery time in half. Get in the game today with 20% off all orders of CBD and lavender products from Lavender Lane, a lavender farm located right here in Milan, Michigan. Just go to lavenderlanemi.com today and enter coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your entire order. Guys, look, these amazing products are infused with calming lavender to maximize their effectiveness, meaning your CBD items only take minutes to take effect, which is way quicker than those pills you were about to swallow. On top of it, they are perfect for men and women. Lavender Lane has lab-tested CBD creams, tinctures, and roll-ons that are perfect for any situation, even if you're on the go. Put your health back in your hands by heading over to lavenderlanemi.com and entering coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your entire order of CBD and lavender products. What do you have to lose? Your satisfaction is guaranteed or your money back. So if you need lavender gifts for your loved ones or just looking for the natural way to ease your discomfort with CBD, go to lavenderlanemi.com and use coupon code DETROIT to unlock these miraculous benefits of CBD and lavender. That's lavenderlanemi.com. And remember, use coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your CBD and lavender products from Michigan's own Lavender Lane.
How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome in, everybody, to the latest edition of the DocNJock podcast. We're at episode 325. I am the Doc, John McEnroe, joining me, my cousin Adam, the Jock Strozinski. More bad football to talk about, cuz.
I wanted to say this was going to be a great show, but I feel like it's going to be a depressing show if you're a Lions or a Michigan fan. What a craptastic weekend this was. Holy hell.
Yeah, man. It's something in which when you start to look at both programs, the Detroit Lions and the Michigan Wolverines, you got to start looking at the people in charge. You know, if Matt Patricia is obviously a defensive genius, if he's a guy that actually can coach any scheme possible, and the defense looks like that, there's a big issue. If you're Jim Harbaugh and it's year 5 and your team against a big opponent on the road, big game, it looks like that, even when you start the game, having to take a timeout, it's just more of the same, and people are not happy when you evaluate who's in charge, and there's a lot more critiques than positives on both sides, but we'll start with the Lions. It was fascinating in that now, a couple of days removed from the Lions' 42-30 loss, is that, what's one of the biggest complaints that Lions fans have about the Lions, the team? It's that they never can put together a complete game where offense, defense, special teams work together and complement each other. It's always something where if it's the offense and defense playing well, then the special teams where Prater will miss 5 field goals. Or if it's where the defense shows up and they're balling out, getting turnovers, then the offense will only muster up 10 points. So in this game, the offense for the Lions against the Vikings did the job. I mean, everyone associated with the Vikings was really unhappy that the Lions dropped 30 on them. But, when you look at what the Lions' weakness was, the Vikings offense completely exploited every facet of their advantages that they had against the Lions defense. And quite frankly, it's unacceptable because even though you had less time, and I know playing on Monday Night Football can be a challenge, but if it's not new, the Vikings were going to run. They were going to use play action. So what did you do in practice? Was there practice? I mean, it was like, okay, stop Dalvin Cook, make the Vikings one-dimensional, and don't fall for the play action. Did they do that? Not in any way, shape, or form.
On top of that, you get helped out when a guy like Adam Thielen goes down and is dealing with a hamstring injury. So you have a wide receiver who's banged up, and he's one of their lethal weapons on offense, and now he's not even playing. Honestly, Matt Patricia is supposed to be this defensive guru, right? And he's going to look like this and get shown up like this. You have to scratch your head as a Lions fan, and as an organization, you should be asking the question, what is this guy doing? The Minnesota Vikings were quoted as saying, we knew we could run certain plays on this defense. We knew we could exploit this defense in certain ways. And they took full advantage of it. Matt Stafford had a hell of a game. Matt Stafford played really, really well. And you blew it. You blew a great game by Stafford. You blew a really good game by that offense. And how? Because the strength of this team, right? Going into the season, we talked about it. What is the one thing that this team has that other teams don't? They have a strong defensive line that has a ton of depth. And I don't know about you, but I really haven't seen this strong defensive line. I haven't seen this ton of depth. I haven't seen any of it. I mean, you go out and you pay a guy like Trey Flowers a ton of money. And what has he done? What has he brought to this team? He's done nothing. He hasn't been accountable. You got a guy like Snacks Harrison, right, who held out and fought for more money. He got paid, right? And I'll say this about Snacks. He hasn't looked very good, but you know what? He's at least accountable. He comes out and he'll tell you. Follow his Twitter. His Twitter is exceptional. Follow his Twitter. He tells you all the time, I need to be better. I need to do a better job of this. I need to do a better job of that. He at least owns up to it. What has Trey Flowers done? Trey Flowers got laced with a massive contract, and the only thing Trey Flowers has done is cost the Lions a game against Green Bay. I haven't seen anything. I haven't really seen any quality sacks. I haven't seen any turnovers. I haven't really seen a whole lot out of Trey Flowers, much less anybody else along that defensive front. That defensive front was supposed to be stacked 7 deep, rotating guys in, putting pressure on the quarterback. Do you realize they had one quarterback pressure on Kirk Cousins? What's Kirk Cousins' weakness? QB pressures. You put pressure on him, he makes bad throws. He turns the ball over. You had one. Going back through, looking at the recap of this game, do you realize the Lions forced 1 3-and-out? That defense forced 1 3-and-out. They only forced 2 punts. Otherwise, this team was putting points on the board. That's awful. Absolutely atrocious. And you know who that falls on? That falls on the guy who runs this team. That falls on Matt Patricia, the guy who's supposed to be a defensive guru. He leaves New England, comes here, and is supposed to help revitalize this defense and make it lethal, make it this lethal weapon. He can coach any scheme. We're not going to have a certain set. We're not going to run a 4-3 or a 3-4. We're going to have multiple fronts. Great. That's awesome. That's great wordplay, and I like hearing it, but I haven't seen it. Do you realize what New England's doing right now? New England's defense is sick right now. It's the best in the league. It's the best that I think you've ever seen in the NFL. It's absolutely insane. They've allowed 0 points this year. 0 first-half points. It's crazy.
It's unbelievable.
And
what are they doing?
This is the guy who replaced the coach that you have.
What are you doing?
That's the problem.
What are they doing? What are they doing over there? They're blitzing. They're pressuring. They're just all over the place. They're excited. There's confusion. They cause chaos. It's just, they got a guy that you had. They got Kyle Van Noy. They got opportunities. They got a scheme that seems to be fitting the talent.
They lose a guy like Trey Flowers, who was arguably the best defensive end during free agency this year. You lose him. He comes to your team. Your defense gets worse.
Right.
Their defense gets better. I mean, it's nuts. Last year, end of the season, they had a top 10 defense. This year, I think the only defense that is behind them might be Miami's. Actually, Miami might be ahead of them. For all defensive categories, they're anywhere between 29 and 31 or 32. They're the worst defense in the league. That's a problem. That's an issue, guys.
At one point in that game, the Lions gave up 4 consecutive touchdown drives. 4! And, even though, the defense was bad, you had an opportunity late. We can even pinpoint that, if the strategy is to get to those clinical moments, you have a 4th and 2, and arguably that call on 4th and 2 had no chance of succeeding. You could argue that Stafford could have checked out of it. Fine. You know what? That doesn't work. You then have an opportunity where, you just scored and the Vikings have the ball and everybody knows they're trying to run the clock out. They're going to give the ball to Dalvin Cook. And everybody knows it. The Lions defense is setting up to stop Dalvin Cook, and the Vikings offense is set up to run. And what happens? Dalvin Cook is still able to get 5 yards. So when the key moments are there, you're not able to handle business. And that's tough, because if that's the setup, I think people will, if you want to defend the defense, will say, look, it's a bend, don't break defense. They're intentionally not trying to pressure the quarterback because they know they don't got the guys to do it. They just, Snacks is hurt. Trey Flowers is, recovered, but both those guys missed time in OTA. Both those guys, the organization wants to present that they're 100%, but they're not. So you have to kind of understand that, okay, they're going to play to their strengths, and their strengths are, just be opportunistic and bend, don't break. But unfortunately, if you don't tackle, if you don't do the fundamentals right, you become a sieve. That's not what's supposed to happen. There's supposed to be at least a little bit of leeway where, hey, you have an opportunity to stop them at least once, couple times, like you said. They didn't force any 3-and-outs. They didn't get there. They didn't, execute the game plan in which it was intended. And that's the tough part, is that, okay, you're still talking about teaching tackling and fundamentals and pad levels. You would think at this point in time, maybe we could get to some advanced concept like exotic blitzes and zone reads and, different zone type defenses. But it just seems like, the Lions have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay. And I do think that, the game like that is alarming, but the schedule eases up. You can make a couple more mistakes where against the Vikings, every mistake the Lions made, the Vikings capitalized on. And remember too, cuz the Lions started out with the lead, and it's unfortunate they couldn't take advantage. And
this is my thing, folks. So you say the schedule eases up. That's fine. But you have to realize, look at what's going on in the league, right? We're talking about possibly making a playoff berth, right? That's kind of what we all hold the Lions to. Other teams get held to, how do we win the Super Bowl? Other teams, how do we win a division? We're talking about just getting a wild card to make it into the playoffs. This team right now at 2-3-1 is probably going to have to win 8 more games. You're going to have to at some point be what, 10-5-1? I don't know if this team gets there, and that's a bit of a problem. I mean, that tie is going to come back and hurt this team. And it just goes to show you that this team takes things for granted, takes games for granted, takes plays off, and it comes back to hurt them. You are not a legitimate franchise. You do not run like you're a legitimate franchise. Look at what goes on in New England. And I know everybody likes to hold New England to the league standard, right? Like, this is how every organization should be ran. But that's because it should. Your organization should run like that because it's a well-oiled machine. They don't take plays off. They just got done playing the other night, and they were throwing so much stuff at Sam Darnold, he admitted he was seeing ghosts. Sam Darnold had no idea where guys were coming from, and he was just throwing the ball up, and they were forcing turnovers. Like that's what you need to do as a defensive head coach. You need to run a scheme where you can get pressure and force a QB to make mistakes. And that's what Matt Patricia was brought here to do.
You know what Kirk Cousins said? He's like, damn, I'm seeing big-ass holes.
Yes. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, he's hitting guys for 66-yard plays downfield. It's insane. Like, do you realize how much time has to develop for you to hit a guy 66 yards down the field? You've got to at least have the ball for 4 or 5 seconds. And that goes back to that defensive front can't get any pressure on the quarterback. You can't send any linebackers in there to put pressure on a quarterback. You're now hanging your secondary out to dry. That's an issue. That's a problem. This guy was brought in because he was supposed to be some type of revolutionary head coach, especially with the defenses, and you're just not seeing it. This team looks broken. I don't understand. You had a tie against a really bad Cardinals team, a team that we said you have to go and you have to get a win here. You ended up tying them. You get a big win against a Chargers team, and then you take advantage of a really poor secondary against the Philadelphia Eagles. You play a close one against the Chiefs, and then you can say that you had one stolen from you against the Packers. But you turn around on a shortened week, and you lay an egg like this. You give up 6 touchdowns to a Minnesota Vikings team while you're at home. Like, you're not even on the road. You're at home. Matt Stafford looks really efficient and has I'm going to say a great game. I felt bad for Matt Stafford. And you know me and Matt Stafford don't necessarily see eye to eye on anything. And I'm like, man, I feel bad for this guy. Like, he has never been surrounded by really anything. Like, he had Calvin Johnson, but reading into Calvin Johnson's words lately with some of the stuff that has come out, it really sounds like Calvin checked out probably 2 or 3 years before he finally called it quits. Matt Stafford has never been surrounded by anything. His O-line has been trash. His running backs have been garbage. And we're going to talk about one of his running backs because he's on IR again. This is insane. He has come to this organization. He is the franchise quarterback, and he has been put in bad spot after bad spot with bad coach after bad coach. And now he gets a guy who's supposed to be this defensive genius as his head coach, and the defense is just getting shellacked. It's insane.
Is Matt Patricia a fraud?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, how can you say anything otherwise? I mean, I would love to hear somebody try to convince me that he's not.
Okay.
Because he did a really bad job last year.
All right.
We both agreed.
Yes.
And then if you look at the last couple games, that they've played, right? Look at the last 3 losses. You give up 34 points, and then you basically get your heart ripped out against Green Bay, and then you give up 6 TDs at home to Minnesota.
All right.
I mean,
I'm making my attempt
about here.
All right, here's my attempt. All right. Matt Patricia is facing an uphill climb because it's a passing league and it's a league that's set up for offense. Okay. Mm-hmm. And now with the full allotment of talent, the Lions were able to compete. They were able to limit Patrick Mahomes. They were able to limit, a great quarterback, from San Diego and Phillip Rivers. They were able to, at least be within a couple freak plays away from defeating Green Bay. And you look at it and you say, yes, injuries happen and it makes it tough. But the idea is that Matt Patricia doesn't believe yet that he has the talent to pressure the quarterback and get sacks. Now, will he dial it up maybe a little bit more against a rookie quarterback? Yes. I just think that Matt Patricia will sit there and tell you that, you know what, my scheme works if they actually go out there and execute it. And they just need a couple more, talented individuals, and that they're maybe really, the development of Jared Davis and Jelani Tavai, and, if Darius Slay gets back on the field, that puts Justin Coleman in his right position in the slot instead of being on the outside. So, yeah, no, I'm not making excuses, but I'll say this. The framework is there that, the big thing that Patricia and that squad have to work on is adaptability. That if you start to see, hey, okay, we have this scheme going on, and they just score 3-4 touchdowns in a row, the next couple drives you got to figure it out on the fly to either dial up some different kind of pressures or to figure out ways, in order to limit. You have to just figure it out, adapt on the fly. And so the Lions have been bit by the injury bug, but you do start to see the semblance of a team that can play with anybody. Now, can they go out there and just week in and week out dominate defensively? I don't know if the league allows you to do that, but you do start to see that, hey, if you get a younger cornerback, if you do indeed decide to let Darius Slay go, if you do start the process of bringing in 1 more, 2 more drafts that fit the Quinn Patricia profile, I start to believe that, hey, you know what? Maybe it will work out, but you might just have to tinker a little bit, bring in another defensive coordinator to kind of maybe reach these guys. Because like you said, look, you have a young Tracy Walker that makes plays. You have guys on defense that can make plays. Earlier in the year, they punched the ball out and forced so many turnovers. So they've been in the game. It's basically, are you going to execute those 3 critical plays? And when they don't, they make bad mistakes. But at the end of the day, the reason why they're making mistakes is because they're on the field for so many plays. They got to stop that. Early in games, Matt Patricia has said, we have to get off the field on 3rd down. We have to make those plays and, really help the defense late in games. But if you see Darius Slay out there, if you see Damon Snacks Harrison healthy, it has the framework of something that can improve, and you can get healthy real quick when you got a young rookie quarterback that has been prone. And the Giants, for some reason, are sticking with Daniel Jones. I think he's going to give us 2 interceptions. He's going to give the Lions some turnovers, and that will help out the cause a little bit, hoping that Darius Slay's injury is not too severe. But I do want to turn it around and talk about...
Hold on. Let me fight you on this, right? Because you said it's a passing league, and I agree with you. It is a passing league. But when Matt Patricia came here to Detroit, the one thing that they had was they had a 6 secondary. Their secondary was one of the best in the league. So you have a guy who goes from having a really solid secondary in New England to come to Detroit and take over their secondary, which was pretty good. And you're like, okay, cool. How can we make this better? You add a couple pieces to that defensive line. So last year you go out and you make a trade and you grab Snacks. So now you just bolstered your D-line. We're like, okay, cool. The linebacking core has got to be bolstered too because it's kind of weak. You go out and you spend a second-round draft pick on Jelani Tavai. So now you've got your secondary, but you just talked about adding a guy like Tracy Walker. If memory suits me correctly, Quandre Diggs is a pretty good player as well. Darius Slay, when healthy, he's a top 5 cornerback in the league. I mean, so you've got pieces here. Where are the wins? Where's all this coming from? I mean, you go out, you add a guy like Trey Flowers. That's supposed to help improve that D-line. Mike Daniels, if I recall, we were excited when we all got him. Where is all of this coming from? Like you're getting nothing out of this defense. Well, and I just went through and I just named a bunch of guys who start for this team who are supposed to be impact players. And you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing squadouche. I'm getting nothing from anybody.
Well, if you want to argue, the defense could then stand at the pulpit and say, hell, we did our job. The offense in Green Bay just settled for field goals. We didn't do our job. So
that's cool. That's last week, and we both agree. Their hearts got ripped out in that game.
Right.
But what about this week? I mean, you had a guy like Matt Stafford go out there and give you 4 TDs.
What?
He got you 30 points. You at some point, as a defense, you have to make a stop.
Yes.
This defense did not make a stop at all this entire game.
Yeah, what if the argument is, you know what, there's just 1 or 2 teams in the NFL that just match up beautifully against you, and the Vikings are that team. The Vikings against the Lions doesn't provide many good matchups because of the fact that they got a solid offensive line, solid running game, solid quarterback, and it just exposes all the weaknesses all at once. That it's not going to be a trend. You're not going to see that the rest of the year. I promise you. You're not going to see a defensive sieve like that the rest of the year.
I'm curious how the Bears are going to play against the Lions. If that's the case, I'm curious to see what the Bears look like when they take on the Lions.
Yes.
Because
if you start to see, I would say the Vikings are an outlier. If you see it against the Giants and you see it against the Raiders, then you start to potentially go, okay, let's put Patricia in the crosshairs and really seriously consider just blowing the whole thing out. Because I think, like I said, going into it this year, the ceiling for most was 7-8 wins, and that's still more than last year. The team looks a little bit more competitive, and I think the last sign of a good team going to a great team is making those key plays, and really against a team like the Vikings where you do have some disadvantages, you still come out ahead. Just yet, look, I'm saying be patient. I'm saying book a win this week versus the Giants, and then we'll go from there. The matchup on the road against the Raiders might be one in which you have an opportunity to really, really evaluate on the road against the Raiders, who can run the football. If you can stop Carr in that rushing attack and you instill some defensive effort and some defensive fundamentals, you might have a chance to go 2-0 in the next 2 weeks. So definitely, I'm saying hold your horses. Definitely pay attention, be locked and loaded, but don't just pull the trigger just yet, because I think the Lions fans are going to be good. There's a chance for a blowout this Sunday. There's a chance it could get out of hand. The team's lost 3 straight. A lot of talk has been negative the last month. I do think you're going to have an opportunity against a team you're better than to get the W. But if they don't have success, I want to turn my focus to, I think the next biggest problem outside of the defense is Kerryon Johnson. Do we have a problem here? Do we have a concern that's alerted in that? I love how, the Lions finally decided to ramp up the usage of him. They played with their toy. They used the hell out of him, but then he gets hurt. And it's kind of a problem because he's not available, and it's looking like it's not going to be a 1-week thing. So is Kerryon Johnson now entering into that injury-prone status where we go, oh boy, he's talented, but he ain't ever going to see the field, so we can't count on him?
I was saying he was injury-prone last year. I was nervous when they drafted him, because he's never played a full season.
Could have had college. Could have had Dalvin Cook.
Whether it be in college or whether it be in the pros, he has never completed a full season, and that looks like that trend is going to continue. At some point, he might just be one of those players where you have to limit his carries, and he can only be special some of the time. He can't be your every down back, and that's okay. He could be a change of pace guy. He could be some type of optional player. He's a guy who you can't count on. Right? And that sucks. He's the guy who's going to go out there and he's going to stretch the field. He'll make a big play, but he's not going to be available for 16 weeks. Do you know what I'm saying? So if I'm the Lions, at some point, I've got to look at either repackaging my running backs. I've got to figure out something different to do. I've got to figure out a creative way to use him and kind of spare him and save him. And that being said, that means I've got to go out and get another guy. So whether that be Ty Johnson now has to carry more of a load, or next year I've got to invest another top-end draft pick in getting a running back, or I've got to find another running back some other way, whether it be free agency or whether it be going and drafting one later and hoping I hit. I've got to now add to my running back core because I can't count on a guy like Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah.
And this is an issue. This is a huge issue because you remember the way this team, talking about it in the offseason, the thing this team wanted to do was this team wanted to run the ball more. They wanted to be more efficient and they wanted to run the ball often. And at this point, you can't do it because Kerryon Johnson can't stay healthy. That's an issue. Big
issue. But remember, Giants, you got to stop Saquon Barkley. Mission number one. I'm giving him 100 yards. I think he'll do well. He'll get in the end zone. But at the end of the day,
I'm going to give him 130.
Give him 130.
I'm going to give him 130.
End of the day, at this point in time, as we're recording this, I have the Lions winning by 10 or more. I think that Stafford is going to ride the momentum. I think Kenny Galladay has a chance against the secondary there. And if Marvin Jones can at least continue some of the momentum with maybe improved performance by the tight ends of the Lions, I think you got a good opportunity for a victory here. You can relax this week. The pressure is going to come going on the road versus Oakland in probably the most important game of the year. This week, come on, Detroit Lions. Let us enjoy a week of football and play really well. Go out there and destroy a team. And just look, cuz, you paying attention to Arizona, dude? They're getting some wins.
Yeah.
How's that midget quarterback getting some wins, bro?
But here's the thing, right? Remember when you play them. It's all about when you play teams.
Yeah.
You played Kyler Murray his very first game as a pro. You should have beat him. But my thing is, I think they get a win here, but I think that's because the offense matches up really, really well against that Giants defense. My concern is what happens with Saquon Barkley and this Lions defense. Is there a possibility Saquon goes for 200 yards and scores 3 touchdowns? I mean, honestly, I wouldn't put it past him at this point. He is a savage animal. He is a beast. That guy's got thighs the size of tree trunks, and he is sturdy. Like, I don't know how many dudes bounce back from a high ankle sprain after only like 2.5 weeks off. And this dude did. Like high ankle sprains generally take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from, right? To be 100%. This dude was like out there cutting and juking 2 weeks out. Like, bro, it's okay. Like, your team's not going anywhere. He's like, no, I got to go play. Let's do this.
All right,
he was good to go.
I'll put the fear in the Lions fans that attend at Ford Field's heart. If the Giants win, it will be not due to Saquon Barkley. It'll be due to one, Golden Tate. He'll understand what's going on. He knows the ins and outs. He'll run all over the Detroit Lions.
I wonder how pissed off he is and how long he's had this game circled.
Yeah, he's probably has it circled. Yep. And
Golden Tate was a really good line, man. He was. And then they just kind of, here you go.
Here you go. So, we'll see what happens. But I'm calling a victory. You are as well. And they got to right the ship, at least for a week. Call the dogs off because, some people are calling for Patricia's job already, trying to replace him with Bevel. Good stuff. Let's show love to the sponsors. The reason why we're able to broadcast every single day, the reason why we have a great studio office here in Sterling Heights is because of great sponsors. 2 of them for this edition of Doc and Jock are the Motor City Pawnbrokers and the Flick Chat application. Let me tell you about the Motor City Pawnbrokers. They're the one-stop pawn shop when you're looking for quality, brand name new, and pre-owned merchandise. They got 4 locations in Warren, Roseville, Detroit, and Ferndale. And each location is staffed with quality individuals that really want to provide great customer service. So for all information and to look for all the great deals that are available, go today and visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. That's MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. If you've agreed or disagreed completely with anything that we've said on this podcast or any podcast that you hear, head on over to the Flick Chat application. What is it? It's Detroit Sports' newest headquarters. It's where Adam, myself, all the hosts, we go and we engage in great conversation. We take information and we debate it, and we have great questions, and it's really easy to sign up. All you got to do is go to your favorite app store, whether it be iTunes or the Google Play Store, and download Flick Chat. And within moments, you can be part of Detroit Sports headquarters. All you got to do is hit that plus button. You'll join a group with our group code, which is all lowercase DSP. That's DSP. and then you can debate. You can let us know what to read, interesting stuff that's out there regarding any of the teams. If you're a fan of wrestling, we talk all about professional wrestling via Flick, and it's a fun group chat application. It's really fun to banter with the fans. And even if you want to just listen to the podcast, you can listen to all the episodes of the Detroit Sports Podcast directly from Flick. So Flick Chat's a great sponsor of the network, and it's Detroit Sports News headquarters. Don't miss out. Join today. Lucky today to be joined by Bob Page, longtime Detroit, New York, and national sports commentator, now in the podcast game. He hosts a podcast with Eli Zarrett and Denny McClain called the No Filter Sports Podcast. You can also hear portions of the podcast on iHeartRadio, WDFN in Detroit, Tuesdays and Fridays. Looking forward to having a football conversation with Bob Page. Bob, how are you today?
I'm doing better now that you ran down that entire list of things for us, including such a great plug for our show. Do I have to pay you for this now? Is this kind of advertising for us? I appreciate that.
No, look, I've been a fan of you, Eli, and Denny for a long time. So to have the opportunity to interact, I've seen a couple messages back and forth. And then you guys did a quality interview with the Lions head coach, Wayne Fontes, and I heard it. I listened to it in its entirety, and it brought back to me old memories of listening to the radio and good conversation and, talking Lions and, the old memories with Wayne Fontes. It just was a great thing. And now you're aware of us, and I get to have the opportunity to catch up with you and talk about the Giants and the Lions. So it's all good.
But the funny thing about it is, John, you're still a young man, and I'm always surprised when people your age say that they've followed my career or that they knew me, because I've lived in New York City now for 31 years. I left Detroit to come here when you were 9 years old, maybe. So anybody who says, as I say, anybody says they recall my career in your age bracket, I'm very impressed.
So obviously, I want to get started with this. What's your impression of the Detroit Lions? I mean, earlier this week, it's interesting when you follow and cover the Lions, things just happen that sometimes leave you scratching your head. And earlier this week, they traded, a starting safety. They're a captain on the team, and it's really much to the surprise of a lot of people. So people are kind of wondering what's going on with the Lions as they sit under 500 at 2-3-1 ahead of this matchup versus the Giants. But what's your impression of the 2019 team?
I told this little story a while ago on our show. I was embarrassed because I'd never been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame before in Canton. No excuse. I just hadn't been. About 3 summers ago, I was driving back from Detroit down to where I live half the year in South Florida in West Palm Beach. And I thought, this is the year I'm doing it. I'm doing it this year. So I went out of my way. I drove to Canton to go see the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I walk in, and there's a cute young lady sitting behind the front desk. Pay her your money. And she asked the same question of everybody that she did of me. And may I ask, sir, who's your favorite NFL team? And it took me 10 seconds. That's how long it took me to think. And I said, young lady, I want you to write this down, because this is the truth. My favorite NFL team is any team playing the Detroit Lions on any given Sunday. And that's what it is. I hate the Lions. They can't lose enough or be embarrassed enough for me. And the reason my hatred runs so deep is because I'm a Detroit boy. And when I grew up in the late 1950s and throughout the 60s and 70s, the sun rose and set on the Detroit Lions. But in late 1963, William Clay Ford stole my football team. He stole our football team. And he and his evil henchman, Russ Thomas, the longtime general manager whom Ford would not fire, destroyed the Detroit Lions and made them the laughingstock that they are today. And he would not sell the team. He would never relinquish control. He only worked for the Ford Motor Company, I think, for 1 year in 1955 as the treasurer. I mean, he had no job at Ford. So the Detroit Lions were his life. And he just had no clue what to do. And while they were destroying our football team, they thumbed their noses at the fans of Michigan, the media, and anybody else. So until the Ford family sells that team, I can't stand them, which is why I invented my nickname for them a few years ago, the FLs. You can imagine what the F stands for, and that's all I refer to them by. The FLs. Does that answer your question?
I think it answers it quite clearly. So I definitely understand your point of view, being that I've watched them since I was a youngster as well. And,
but that's not very long for a guy your age.
No, you're right.
I mean, I talk to younger people in their 20s, 30s, and even 40s, and I mention the name Russ Thomas. They've never even heard of him before. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Russ Thomas, one of the most Machiavellian, incompetent, bungling people in the history of all Detroit sports. Bad draft choice after draft choice. His contract negotiations were a joke. He lost so many great players because he penny pinched and behind the scenes knifed people in the back left and right. Anybody who got in his way. Nick Kerbaway, here's another name I bet maybe you and a lot of people don't know. Nick Kerbaway was the general manager of the great Detroit Lions world championship teams in the 1950s. And Nick was an old friend of mine. And one day, years ago, Nick's gone now, but one day years ago, he was telling me this story. He's sitting in his office and he gets a call from, here's another one of those names, you young people. He gets a call from Buddy Parker, who was, of course, the head coach of those champion Detroit Lions teams. And Buddy says to Nick, he says, Nick, I want you to do me a favor. Nick says, sure, buddy, whatever you want, name it. I want you to fire Russ Thomas. Nick said, okay, buddy, talk to you later. Just called, didn't ask him anything else, called Russ Thomas into his office and fired him. And then Billy Ford hired him back. And the reign of terror continued. Oh, you know, it was much worse than the Matt Millen era under Bill Ford, because Matt Millen, as bungling and incompetent as he was as a general manager, was a nice guy. Matt Millen's a good guy. He just had no idea what he was doing, and Ford kept him on anyway. And Matt Millen, by the way, would still be, you must know this, John, he still would be the general manager of the Detroit Lions, if not for a little press conference one day outside the Detroit Athletic Club. You know about this, right?
I do.
Anyway, so when Bill Ford was running Ford Motor Company, Bill Jr., this is, he gave a speech down there in front of a large group of people. So a whole lot of media folks showed up. So Bill Ford left when his speech was over, and the media gaggle surrounded him, and they were asking him questions about, you know, the Ford Motor Company and what was going on. Finally, at the end of this little news conference, one reporter from the backside, so Bill, you know, what are you going to do about the Lions? What's the problem? And Bill Ford said to the reporters, if it had been up to me, I would have fired Matt Millen a long time ago. That's the only thing that woke his father up, because it was so embarrassing to his dad that his dad said, well, I guess the jig's up, Matt. I mean, this is this kind of just this incompetence with the Detroit Lions that we've seen since late December 1963 when Bill Ford got control of the franchise.
But now, here in 2019, do you have and put any perspective into the Lions and how they're shaped now with Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, who come from the New England Patriots?
Patricia's going to probably be fired at the end of this season after only 2 years in the job. They're not going anywhere. They're not doing anything. If you listen to the show we just taped earlier this morning, which is on Thursday, October 24th, I gave a preview of the Lions-Giants game coming up at Ford Field on Sunday, because I covered the Giants for so many years here in New York. And although I'm a reporter, I'm a big Giants follower. I really am. We previewed that game, and it's a game that either team could win. It's a very winnable game for each team right here. So it doesn't matter in the sense that neither team's going anywhere this season, as usual with the Lions anyway. It matters in terms of the future of the two head coaches involved. Detroit's own Pat Shurmur, former Michigan State center with the Giants, and of course Matt Patricia with the Lions. I think there's a good chance that neither of them is going to be back next year as the FL's floundering continues.
Okay, so obviously you're not high on what you're seeing from Matt Patricia. What are some of the things that you're observing that lead you to believe he's not going to be around?
I think you need to be talking to Eli Zarin and Denny McClain. I just see the Detroit Lions games usually on tape highlights. If they're on TV, of course, I'll watch them. I couldn't care less. I don't sit and watch the Detroit Lions every Sunday. I haven't lived in Detroit in more than 30 years, and I just gave you the reasons why I don't care too much about them at all until perhaps if and when they sell the franchise. But look, obviously, I know what's going on with the Lions. They have a great quarterback who seems to get hurt a lot, and the other people around Matt, they come and they go, and it's just nothing ever changes. They'll get a great player and then they'll get rid of him. There was a big controversy this week on the safety Diggs that they traded away and got a big 5th-round draft choice from Seattle back. It's just more of the same all the time. When Al Ackerman and I were on Channel 7 together in the late 1970s, we had enough. Way back then and even before then, we'd had enough of the Detroit Lions. So Al decided what we would do is adopt our own team in Detroit. So we said, and Aaron said, you send your suggestions to us on a postcard here at Channel 7. Here's the address, and tell us what team you think that we in Detroit should adopt, since we obviously have no professional football team of our own. And you can imagine in those days, the overwhelming sentiment was the Dallas Cowboys, and that's as far as it went. It was all, it was in fun, and that's what it was. We knew seriously that nobody's going to adopt the Dallas Cowboys. But I know so many people my age, and I'm well over 60, who gave up on the Lions a long time ago. We've had enough. You younger guys maybe haven't had enough yet, but I guarantee you will at some point.
All right, give me your impressions of the Giants. What was your impressions when the Giants drafted Daniel Jones?
My immediate impression was that they picked him too high. If the Giants like him, then I like him too. Okay, and he's a great Duke kid, highly intelligent. Obviously, he's got a lot of physical attributes. But to me, in a situation like that, I think they should have traded down to get him. They still could have picked him maybe at 10, 11, or 12. And there's a lot of, there's some controversy and some speculation about that. Oh, well, another team might have taken him. But when they put that kid in the game after telling us in the preseason that there was no way, they had hoped that he would not play a single down all season, they were going to go with Eli Manning. But Eli just, at this stage of his career, he just can't get it done anymore. Team was really going nowhere rapidly. So they suddenly, surprisingly, decided to bench Eli and start Daniel Jones. His first game, he had a perfect quarterback rating. He was amazing. Never seen such a thing in a player's first game at quarterback. And he's kind of declined ever since, pretty steadily. He's got talent, and I really do think he's going to be good eventually, but he's scuffling right now. And I don't know, what his confidence level is at this point. Saquon Barkley was out for much of the season with an injury suffered in the opener. He's back now. Frustrating thing for me about Saquon, he'll be the best player on the field come Sunday, is that they don't give him the ball enough. They just don't. And I think part of that is because people devise schemes. You think Matt Patricia and his defensive people are coming up with a scheme to stop Barkley on Sunday? Sure they are. So the Giants frequently have to go elsewhere, and he doesn't touch the ball enough. Giants defense has been very bad the last few weeks. This is a foundering team again, that does not look like it is going anywhere this season. So it could be a really good game on Sunday. I went out on a limb on our show today and did something I rarely ever do, and that is make a pick. Beyond that, I think the Lions to win this game. I just think, they're playing at home. Stafford's playing real well right now. And, the Lions have been embarrassed too. And I just have this weird feeling that the FLs are going to win this game.
Okay, and so you do have the unique perspective of having, witnessed and covered Barry Sanders, and now you're witnessing and looking at.
No, I've never met Barry Sanders in my life.
Okay, but obviously from afar.
I moved to New York in 1988, and after I got here, I got a call from the Metro Times. I had done some sports writing for them too, and they told me that they wanted to do a cover story on Chris Spielman. And I said, well, that's great, but I live in New York now, well, do you come back to Detroit? Well, yeah, I still do, like every week for a couple of days. So why don't you do an interview with Chris? So I did. I went on and I sat down with Chris, training camp, wrote a cover story for Metro Times. But I did not do anything on Barry Sanders. To this day, I've never met him, and I really missed his entire career in Detroit, other than the highlights in certain games. So I'm not an expert on Barry Sanders, to be sure.
Okay, what's your impressions of Saquon Barkley and what he brings to the table?
He's just an amazing talent. He's an amazing talent. He's just a fantastic talent. He does it all. I mean, he's a great receiver out of the backfield, obviously a tremendous runner. But we all saw him. I mean, I went to Michigan State and I grew up a huge Michigan fan, and I covered the whole Bo and Woody 100 yards war thing, whatever they called it, for a long time. So I never miss a Michigan football game. I never miss a Michigan State football game. So, we've all, again, seen Saquon Barkley play a lot at Penn State, but he's just a stupendous talent. He can block. He does it all. I just think once more, he's being underutilized a bit.
You know what, Bob? I've enjoyed the conversation. I know we're doing it for a segment here today, but if you're back in town, you know what? I think we should link up and have a more in-depth conversation. I really do want to get a chance to hear your stories regarding the Lions, the FLs, as you call them. I've enjoyed the conversation. I definitely interact with lots of fans of the Lions who are definitely angry and frustrated and have B teams and things like that. But I will say this, you watch Big Ten football, you watch the Giants and the Lions. I think you and I are due to kind of maybe watch some quality football one of these days.
Okay, man. Good to talk to you, John. Thanks for having me on.
All right, cuz, I had me some fun on Saturday. I was singing. I was kind of looking forward to it. It was, in terms of Michigan taking on Penn State, really everybody knew what was going to happen, and it did not fail to deliver. Play one, Michigan lines up, the crowd's going ape shit, all the white, they're screaming. All of a sudden, the play's not getting run. They called timeout, and then the train started, and, at least for Michigan fans, I'll say this. They did deserve seeing, their guy, Shea Patterson, make some plays offensively, and at least you were within a drop ball away from competing and winning the game versus Penn State. So it was good. They did show resiliency. But at the end of the day, you can hyper-focus on the fight that they showed in the second half, or you can be realistic and look at the complete body of work. That first half was god-awful. I mean, that probably was another bad half. I think I read where against Wisconsin and Penn State, it's like 49-0, a disadvantage in the first half in terms of scoring, where it was 28-0 in the advantage for Wisconsin. Then it was 21-0, I believe, for Penn State. So you look at it, cuz, and it's just more of the same. And I think now I don't even think Michigan fans can be really angry. It's just, okay, you either understand this is what it is and you're ready to move on, or you say, you know what? I'm going to take the Dabo Swinney patience approach. Or, fans are saying, look, Dabo Swinney had 8 years, and he wasn't successful his first 4. We're going to ride it out. And you either fall into one of those two camps. Me, personally, I've seen enough, man. This is like year 3, 4, and 5 of a coach that doesn't seem to bring it in the big moments. And, yeah, his team made mistakes, but at the end of the day, you got to get at least one big signature win. Lovie Smith has one.
Dude, this game falls squarely at the feet of Jim Harbaugh.
You blame the coach directly.
Directly. You can't go on the road to Penn State in a big game like this and not start on time. This team did not get rolling until halfway through that second quarter. You can't do that. That's on your coach. That's on your coaches. That's on that entire staff. Okay? So that's checkmark number 1. Okay? Let's go back and let's micromanage. This game kind of gets close. This team kind of gets rolling. We're in the fourth quarter. You've got a chance. If you can come up with one stop, you get the ball back, put yourself in a position to maybe tie this game up and get a big score. You have Jim Harbaugh call a timeout with under 2 minutes left and challenge a play. He didn't even call it timeout. He challenged a play that was obviously a first down. He basically threw his flag and challenged a play knowing that he had no shot. You gave up a timeout when you needed to hold on to that for the very last second to try to pause that clock to buy your guys some time. You basically waved the white flag and you threw the towel in.
Hey, did you guys know? Did you guys know that you got a kicker that can kick damn near 60 yards for a field goal?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
This is, dude. There are moments in this game where you're just like, what is he thinking? What is he doing? I was baffled and I was perplexed and I was confused. And I don't even think he knows what's going on. Honestly, I think a big issue with this team, we are now 7 games in. This team still has no identity. You have no idea what this team is. You want to be smash mouth and you want to be able to punch teams in the face on defense, but yet you get lit up on big play after big play. You want to be a team that spreads the ball around and you throw it all over the field. Yet you got receivers who can't catch balls, or you have a quarterback who can't hold on to the ball, or you have a quarterback who can't make those plays downfield. You want to be a team that maybe runs the ball, but yet you don't know which running back you want to use this week. This team is so confusing, so perplexing, and honestly, for me, it all falls at the feet of Jim Harbaugh. I don't think Jim Harbaugh knows exactly what he wants to do. I don't think he knows what he has in this team. And sometimes this happens, right? And I'm not trying to put a positive spin on it. I'm frustrated with this team. This sometimes happens. You will see good coaches not really know what they have until the following year. That wasn't supposed to be the case this year. It was not. This team is trash. This coaching staff is garbage. If I have to hear about how fucking Don Brown is a great head coach or a great defensive coordinator, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, I'm driving around in South Bend, and it's funny because this is a big game, and the Notre Dame fans are hyped, and they're geared up for this game this week. But you listen to the announcers are laughing at Michigan. They're laughing at the coaching staff. They're laughing at the players. It's really weird, and it's kind of nuts, but I get it because I look at this team and I laugh. And if I've got to hear Putty send me a message or call me and talk to me about how this team looks like, oh, well, Patterson played his ass off. Patterson sucks, dude. He sucks. This team sucks. Harbaugh sucks. Like, take off the maize and blue goggles. Look at what you got. This team is trash. They are awful. They put 417 yards of offense up, and you still lost. You controlled the football for over 15 minutes more than Penn State, and you still couldn't find the end zone. These are problems, guys. These are problems.
Penn State puckered up after they got the lead. They wanted to give you the ball. They wanted you to score. You just couldn't do it. I mean, they puckered up so bad, in the second half that, you were within an executable play. How much blame do you give, and how much blame should Michigan fans give Ronnie Bell for dropping the ball? Look, not sending him hate stuff on Twitter, but dude, you got to catch the fucking ball.
But here's the thing. It doesn't come down to that one play. It's not about that one play. It's about not starting on time for almost 20 minutes of the game. It's about not putting your guys in proper position to win a game. It's about not utilizing a timeout in the final minute and a half, 2 minutes of a game when you need that timeout to try to pause the clock, because if they do get a first down, it's about not wasting opportunities. Yeah, he dropped the ball. That happens, okay? But what about everything else that led up to that? Where is everything else? Cool, you want to pick apart a kid who drops a ball? Be my guest. I think you're a boner for doing that. There's so much more that goes into the wins and the losses, and you need to look harder. You need to look deeper. This falls at the feet of your head coach, man. It falls at the feet of your defensive coordinator. It falls at the feet of your offensive coordinator, who obviously is in over his head. This entire team is a complete disaster. This is a bad season. I know they're 5-2, and everybody's like, "Oh, cool, they're 5-2." Great. You're going to finish, 8-4? Are you going to call that a good season? I mean, is that what you want? If you're a Michigan fan, is 8-4 acceptable? Because if you ask me, I tell you no. I tell you no, and I tell you you're a loser if that's the case. If 8-4 is acceptable for you as a Michigan fan, you are a loser fan, and you know what? I want you away from me. Don't come near me. Don't talk to me. I will ignore you. I will block you from my phone. I don't want to hear you. You are a loser, and I don't care. All right. You want to talk about Dabo Swinney and taking 8 years? Great. It was Clemson. You know what Clemson was? Clemson was not supposed to be an elite program. This is Michigan, and obviously it's not an elite program anymore. But if you're a Michigan fan, you still have visions of grandeur, and you still have these memories of when this team was actually relevant and respectable. Because right now, I'm going to tell you guys, they're not relevant. They're not respectable, not even in the Big Ten. And you know what? the Big Ten is garbage this year. The Big Ten is trash. Look at what is going on in your other conference. Minnesota leads the other division in this conference. Let that sink in. Wisconsin just got popped by Illinois. Yeah. Illinois is trash. Illinois is a scrub team, and Wisconsin just got popped.
Yep.
It's a whole conference full of frauds. So you want to kind of talk about this. Let's talk about it. Everybody here is fraudulent. Everybody here, but maybe Ohio State, is going to possibly do something. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Ohio State plays Michigan. I can't wait. I'm bringing all the Vaseline. I'm not even messing with baby oil. I'm bringing Vaseline because it's about to be an anal raping, and that's what's going to go down.
Okay, one last thing before we get out of here, because obviously we talked about the Lions and we talked about Jim Harbaugh and the struggles of Michigan. Which coach has failed their program more? Because Matt Patricia is supposed to be a defensive guru, and the defense has gotten worse. Jim Harbaugh is supposed to know something about quarterbacks and offense, yet he's turned it over to someone that loves the inside rush more than anyone in God's green earth. The offense, obviously takes chances, but it's not enough. It's calculated, and you just don't see the quarterback play to the level of what maybe Michigan standards should be. Which coach has, in your mind, let the team down more? Is it Patricia because of his expertise and his championship pedigree from New England? Or is it Jim Harbaugh who, when he had a decent quarterback, was able to shine and had some big wins, just not at Michigan?
It's got to be Jim Harbaugh. I mean, at this point, right, he's got all of his own recruits.
He's 5 years in, yeah.
He's got everybody that he wants in positions that he wants them. I mean, you go back to last year, remember, Shea Patterson was supposed to be the savior. So he's got everybody he wants, whether it be his coordinators or his players, and he is failing the most. Matt Patricia, year 2, right? There's some growing pains. Second year as a head coach, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Next year, that all changes for Patricia. Right now, Jim Harbaugh is failing the most, and Jim Harbaugh is failing harder. I mean, it was set up for you to take over last year, to get to the Big Ten, win a Big Ten championship, and go and possibly play in the playoff. And yet you failed. You got exploited by Ohio State, and then your team never even bothered to show up against Florida in your worthless bowl game. So for me right now, Jim Harbaugh has failed the most and will continue to fail because I just don't think he's got it. I don't.
Are you coming into town to check out Michigan Notre Dame?
No, I'm going to actually be working this weekend. So I'm still kind of up in the air on whether or not, and look, this team's got some stuff to show me as far as what they're going to put on the field here. But there's a possibility I might go see them play Ohio State, but I don't know.
Look, for your viewing pleasure, just drop some coin and go see Michigan play Michigan State because it's going to be probably a victory, in the neighborhood of 15-12, but I think you'll get the victory and you can celebrate what you guys are dominant in, which is, the only realistic goal you can have nowadays is, look, let's just beat Michigan State and figure it out later.
Honestly, I might just come in and just watch that with a couple of my buddies because I know that's a big game that the guys always get hyped for. But no, I will not be in town for the shellacking.
Yeah, no, it's you think that Notre Dame presents some big challenges for Michigan? You don't see some success, a little bit of rebound, at least the game's at home, prime time?
No, not at all. Look, Notre Dame's a really good squad. They have a very good quarterback. They've got a very good running back. And I think that defense is going to make things incredibly different. They're difficult for a guy like Patterson. So, no, I don't think Michigan has a chance.
Yeah, I think the reckoning could come if another loss happens in the big house. I think it's time. People are definitely not happy. They're not happy that Michigan is not relevant, that 5 wins against garbage teams and 2 big-time losses against the 2 best teams on your schedule. It just can't happen. Michigan deserves better. I think Michigan and Michigan State deserve better coaching. The Lions, for whatever reason, just haven't maybe lived up to potential, but not as far off as the college teams. But yeah, football in town has not been something where we all can hang our head on. It's just something that it's a lot of criticisms and a lot of improvements need to be made by the 3 squads that we all watch and cover. So it's just one of those weeks, man. I just think that in terms of football around town, Michigan State, Detroit Lions. It's a roller coaster, but one in which it's looking a little bit broken. Out of order is the best way to call this episode. Detroit Lions football, Michigan Wolverine football, Michigan State Spartan football, out of order. Great podcast, sir. Enjoy the conversation. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you agree or disagree or hate everything that we're saying, feel free, lob us a voicemail, 248-579-8686, or leave us a comment. We will read it at Detroit Podcast. Episode 325 coming to a close. Sir, always enjoy the conversation.
Always a great time, brother. Be good.
This was locker room talk.
Second deck.
Sorry, Detroit. It didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.